So guys, today we're going to be continuing our jumper cable tests. It's going to get a little more interesting. I contacted my friends over at Windy Nation, where I get a lot of my welding cable for my truck, and I ordered some 2-aught pure copper welding wire to make some heavy jumper cables. So we're going to compare the CCA cable to the welding cable. These are both 15 feet long with the same connectors. They're soldered. You might not be able to see it, but they're soldered into the, what are they, aluminum, I mean not aluminum, silver terminals that they use. And then also on the jumper cables, I put braiding going from each tooth. I soldered it to each side, so both jaws work. It's 1-inch tinned copper braiding, and I even did it on the old jumper cables to see if that was causing our voltage drop. So you can see it in there. It goes underneath on that one. See, it runs down the side. Same with this one. So I'm gonna get them set up, and then we're gonna do some tests with it, and I'll have the Picoscope recording, and we'll see how much of a voltage drop we have and how much current. Now in between each test, I'm gonna wait like 10 or 15 minutes for the carbon pile tester to cool down and the cables. We'll also try to measure the temperature using a thermal camera right here. So we'll see how much the temperature increases. I'll be trying to do all this by myself. We'll see how this works. So I'm gonna get it set up, and we'll start with the CCA cable, my old cables first, and then we'll do the copper ones after. So guys, we got the Pico set up, and we got our amp clamp, which is our blue trace, which is around the negative wire right there, measuring the current going through the cable. Our red trace is connected right here, piercing the wires right before the connector, so we can measure the voltage coming out of the truck. And then our green trace is connected right here on these bars, so we can measure the voltage at the bar. And then I got my 500 amp carbon pile tester connected right here. So we're going to do these first, and then we'll do our copper wire. So let's turn up our current. So there we go. You can see right now that when we put the load on, our current went up to 254 amps, and our voltage at the connector, well, right before the connector, was at 12.15 the entire time. And then at our load, which I'm considering the bar, we had 7 volts. So we dropped 5 volts there with only 250 amps. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to load up, well, I'm going to connect up the copper wire, and then we'll run the same test again, and we'll see what the difference is. And also keep in mind, these are the same size wire. They're both 2-aught. And same length. Okay guys, got it all set up. Let's load test this one, see what happens. Okay guys, so it looks like we pulled 400 and 394 amps. Our drop at the connector went down to 10 volts, and we were at 11.94 at the connector on the truck. So we dropped down like what, 1.5 volts at our load. So I think what I'm gonna try to do here is I'll save this. Save this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my other load tester. We'll add the other load tester on top of this one, and we'll see how much current we pull. So here we go. We got a 100 amp load tester. We'll put on top of this other one. So let's start this back up, and we'll see if we can pull more current. So there we go, we pulled way more current that time. Let's see. We were up to 150. 450. And we dropped down to 9.5 volts, so we're still way higher voltage. We need to come up with a way to pull more load on here than that, because I think that's our issue. I think our temperature's going up on the rod. Actually, I know it's going up on the rod. This rod gets kind of warm. But I'm going to let this cool down, and we'll do some temperature tests with the cables. We'll see how much the temperature increases on the cable. Okay guys, so I had to get creative. I came up with a way to create more load. So what I did was I took a coat hanger and I bent it up like this to act like a heating element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch my jumper cable to the other side while it's underwater. The water's going to keep it cool so that we can keep a constant current. And I'm hoping we can get a really high current on this to load it up and simulate like the copper clad aluminum cables. So it's going to spark and it's going to bubble a little bit, but the water is going to help keep it cool. And it's going to stop it from melting stuff. So here we go. There we go. Oh, look at that, guys. We pulled, how many amps is that? We pulled 856 amps from that. And what was our voltage drop? .6, I think, or we at like 7.6 with the other cables from, let's see, what was it before the connector? We pulled the truck down to 10 volts. So we were at, what, 2.5 volts drop with 900 amps on for, how long was that? Had it on for about 10 seconds. What did we go up to? We spiked over 1,000 amps through that cable. And I don't even think the cable got any warm. It might have increased just a little bit. But But yeah, that was what I used for an element right there. And it's cold to the touch. Right there, that's what I used. So I had this side connected like that, and then actually I think we connected here to shorten it up a little bit, but it just acted like a heating element like your stove. So I'm gonna overlay some of this stuff and then we'll go back and we'll look at it. Well, I think that's awesome. That's a huge difference. So we 4 times the current through the cable to get the same voltage drop. So now let everything cool down a little bit and then we'll do some temperature tests. So it's been like an hour or so since we stress tested the cables. Everything should be cooled down now. I hooked up the CCA cable. We're going to test this with a thermal imaging camera. I think you guys can see it pretty good. So right now, everything's at around 57 degrees or so. 57 to 60. Been over here. You might not pick up that shiny surface right. So we're going to turn up the current and we'll see what happens. So you can see some heat appearing in the jaw. There's actually some heat over here in the jaw. You can see where it's like clamped. It got up to like 160 degrees. Let's look at the cable. Cable's at 62. Let's look at this one. I don't think the jumper cables shouldn't heat up. They shouldn't heat up that much. Yeah, they didn't heat up that much. It's this load tester that really heats up. That's why I have to wait every time. So you don't see much temperature change. Now I know if you held that load on there for a long time, these cables will heat up more because they have a higher resistance. That's why our drop in voltage is so high, because they have a higher resistance. What did we see that time? We saw like down to 7.2 volts. So we had less of a drop with 4 times as much current through the copper wires. This is insane. I didn't think there would be that much of a difference. Everybody says there's a like CCA wire capacity is 60%. Maybe at a constant current, but if you're using them for like jumper cables, stuff like that, you're hurting yourself big time. So I don't even see a point in like checking the temperature of the copper wires. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go outside and we're going to actually jump start a car. I'm going to disconnect the battery on a truck and we'll jump start it with the cables and we'll measure the voltage and the current. We'll just take the battery completely out and we'll jump start it right off the truck. Oh, and I also want to show you guys before we go outside the difference in the weight of the cables. I'll get my scale out here and we'll look at the weight. It's insane. So guys, I have this like baby scale here that I use for weighing parts. It's zeroed right now. So we'll put the CCA wire on. The only difference in the CCA cable is this boot that I have slid on here and the cap, which weigh like nothing. I can even take the cap off. I can't take the boot off though. But here we go. We'll put the CCA wire on there. And we're at what? 7.3 pounds? 7.3 pounds. So now we'll put the copper wire on there. And we're at what, almost 15 pounds? what, 14? Like what, 14.7 or so? Double the weight. Just thought I'd point that out there. So that is something to consider when you're buying this. And if you look, this cable was made by Voodoo, and it says 2/0 all wire gauge. Well, I guess American wire gauge. And then if you look at this, this is made by Windy Nation, and it says 2/0. So, I'm gonna take this outside and we'll do some real world testing. So guys, I got the Pico set up, we're outside. I got the CCA jumper cable set up. Same setup as inside. I disconnected it completely from the battery right here. So we're just using the jumper cables clamped on. And we'll start the truck up just off my truck. And we'll see how much current we can pull through these. Let's see, are these on good? Let's see. Yeah, we're on pretty good. So just want to make sure everything's on there good. I have this clamped right here on the edge. That's the best spot to get the voltage on this, and then that one's clamped right there. Let's see, there you go. So we have the Pico set up. Everything looks good. We'll crank this and see what kind of voltage that we get there at the end. And we can also listen to see how it cranks. So we'll do this test twice. Let's see how this looked. We'll zoom in on this. Let's see. Let's see. So our peak current going in, what do we max out at? 400 amps just for a split second. And then our highest peaks cranking was 318. What was our lowest? 260. Let's look at our battery voltage. Our battery voltage, well, the voltage at the clamps. Looks at, like, the highest was at 7.6, the lowest was 6 volts. So that ain't good. So just trying to start this, we dropped down to 6 volts. Okay, so I'm going to save this real quick, and then we'll repeat the test. So I got it all set back up. We'll redo this test. Here we go, still set up the same way. We're not touching. Look at this again. Looks like our peak current again was, this one was 407. Let's see what our voltage went down to. Right when that inrush happens, we went down to 5 volts there. But then cranking was 7 volts. See what the truck voltage was. The truck voltage only dropped down to 12.56. But it looks like this has a bad starter. You can see this hash down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna switch out for the copper wire, and then or copper jumper cables, and we'll try that. Okay guys, got the copper jumper cable set up. We'll start this one up. We'll try this. Let's see. That was a huge difference. That just like instantly, like there wasn't even like a hesitation there. Let's try this. Look at this. Oh man, guys, we went off the chart and current. Let's redo this. Actually, hold on, I'll save this real quick. File, save as. This is copper. Start copper. This was test 1. Let's set our current up higher. So there we go, we'll have a 950 amp scale. Okay, let's try this again. Man, that is amazing. Still save me a lot of time at dealerships since I'm always dealing with dead batteries there. See, it's still not connected to anything. Let's see. Let's look at this. Okay, so we pulled 866 amps through there. And then our cranking current right here where it came up was 300 and some. And let's look at our voltages. So our lowest voltage was 7.5 when it turned, but like cranking, we were all the way up at 12 volts while cranking. Actually, we were at 13. Was that 13 volt? No, sorry. There we go. Yeah, we were around like 11.5 volts while cranking. That is amazing. And what did our truck voltage drop down to? Our lowest was like around 11, 12. So yeah, we only have like a half a volt drop or so from the truck. That is awesome. So let me save this. See if we can quick do another one. Save. Run the same test again. There we go. Everything's still set up the same way. Let's go crank this. Wish I would have known years ago that this made this much of a difference. Man, there's like no hesitation. Oh, whoops, did I drag that over? Look at that again. Pulled 857. Our lowest voltage was 8.8 that time, looks like, and our cranking voltage was around just under 11 volts. Man, huge difference, guys. Look at that. Maybe what I can do, if you guys want, I can do a car that's like, make it a crank no start or something and just crank it, but huge difference. So guys, I wanted to go over some of our captures that we took earlier. Hopefully this is understandable. I'll try to explain it all. So right here on the screen we have our captures from the Picoscope, and this blue right here where the cursor's at, this trace is the copper one. This other one is the CCA wire. I wanted to overlay them so that we could see the difference. So if we look at this, you'll see right here where the cursor's at, we were at 257 amps. That was with the CCA wire using the 500 amp load tester. Up here, you can see we peaked at 403 amps using the carbon pile tester, and let's see what it leveled off at. Leveled off at around 361. Now with the carbon pile tester, because the way it works, it's pretty much acts like a giant heating element. The current will slowly go down. You can even see that at the 257 amps, it slowly went down. But the biggest issue here is if you look at this light green trace here, this is where we dropped down to 7 volt with the CCA cable. And we even had a higher, we pulled more current and we dropped down to 9.8 right here with the copper right above that. And you can see our battery voltage didn't change much. With the CCA, we were at 12 volts. With the copper, we were at 11.7. So there wasn't too much of a drop there. You can see it was just all the cabling. Because remember, our green clamp, or our green trace, was measured at the load. So that was the one that I clamped onto the jumper cables themselves. The red was at the connector. So there's that. And then here is when we went to jumpstart the car. This is the both CCA cable tests overlaid over top of each other. So you can see we managed to pull, how much did we manage to pull? Initially, for like a second, we pulled, looks like 418 amps. Somewhere around here. It's 418 amps. And our voltage at our connector during an initial inrush in the starter, we dropped down to 5.15 volts. That's really low. Like, that's going to make modules shut down. I think that's why it took so long to start on this one, that one start. And you can see our cranking voltage, which is right around here, was around 5.8, so almost 6 volts. So that's not good when you're trying to jumpstart a car. You can see up here our voltage in the red trace at the vehicle stayed around 12.43, so there wasn't a huge load on the vehicle. Like, we weren't taxing anything. So it was just all voltage drop in the cable. And you can see the time to start the vehicle from right here to here was 1.388 seconds right here. It's this delta symbol. This is our difference between these 2 points. So almost a second and a half to start it. And you can see, like, right here on this second hump, we were at 323 amps. On this other one, let's see what we were on the other one. The other one, we were around 243. So now we'll go over to the copper wire. Here's our copper. So you can see our inrush current. It's actually a little higher. Wait. Other one, let's see. So on that one we had 859 amps. Now I don't know how accurate my amp clamp is up in this range because it's rated for 600 amps, but we can go a little higher. You can see at our voltage at the connector. Let's see, what was our lowest voltage at the connector? It looks like it's right around there. So we went down to 8 volts. Yeah, they look both around 8 volts. So it looks like we dropped down to like 8 volts. We can even move these out of the way so you can see. Yeah. You can see there's really no green down below here. So we dropped down to 8 volts. So that's 3 volts or so higher than our CCA wire. And you can see our vehicle. What did our vehicle drop down to here? Looks like we dropped down to around, what, 11.75 volts? 11.83. So that's pretty good at the vehicle. And at our cable, we dropped down to 8.5. But we were pulling, what, 860 amps right there. And our cranking voltage, which is right around here, was 11.63. So that's even better than what you see with a normal car battery cranking. Most car batteries, when you crank a car, you're probably around like 10.5 or so on a good battery. So we're pretty much a volt higher than what normal cars are cranking. And then you can see down here, our current is 285 amps. Let's see, do we have another? Let's see what this one was. This one was 361. But you can see our time to start, like for the car to start right here, consistently. Was that like half a second? Yeah. 593.6 milliseconds. So that's like what? A third of the CCA cable. And it's repeatable. Look how consistent that was. Look at that. So that's a huge difference. I hope you guys like this. I hope you found it interesting. I never seen anybody test cables like this. But we really tested the cables pretty much to the limit. Like, I wish I could have did more with the thermal camera. But the issue with the thermal camera is, like, the cables are so thick, we're not going to heat them up safely. Like, we'd have to have a constant load to heat them up. Oh, and I think I have one more here. Here you go. Here's the difference between the two. So this is the lower one right here is the CCA cable. Actually, wait, no, this one's the CCA cable. Yeah, it's a CCA cable. And this one right here, this is the copper wire, or the copper cable. Yeah, this is the copper cable. Look at our scaling. So, see, this one goes up to 500 amps over here. So that's the CCA cable right there. And if you look at our scaling over here, this one goes up to 1,000 amps. And you can see our voltage drop differences here. So where one dropped to 5 volts, the other one dropped to 7.8. And look at the current difference. We're pretty much able to do double the current with the same amount of voltage drop between the two. Like, the copper wire can do twice as much current with the same amount of voltage drop. So I hope you guys like this. If you want to see anything else, let me know. See you later.